want to tell you more about my job today. So that's a very exciting new venture. I've been doing it for 2 months and it's not in television. Yes. So my job is a part-time arrangement with a company called Instacart. And they do grocery delivering here in the United States. They do that nationwide. They call it international because I think they have a couple stores in Canada as well. Did I just say couple stores? Because I meant to say a couple of stores. Very important thing. Gavin Cole, one of my very early colleagues in the United Kingdom at Todeo UK back in 1999. He brought that to my attention, that Americans like to drop the off preposition. Is it a preposition? I think it is. From this phrase, a couple of things. They like to just remove the off altogether. I love these guys, leaf blowers. Yeah, really noisy, loud machines that don't do anything. They just make our lives horrible. Anyway, those guys, I think there's about 4,000 of them here. Don't know why they've got such loud machines. So anyway, these guys, see what I did there? Yes, they are around here, which is why it's a little bit noisy. But back to my job. So it's a venture that goes back to, I'd say, middle of 2017. Sort of just the time when I got better, when we found immunotherapy, and when I finally got better and showed major signs of improvement. They're literally day by day, a very exciting period of time. And it was a time when it became clear that Julia didn't have to look after me full time anymore. She had to do that previously because it was, well, I wasn't well enough to do anything basically. So she took care of me more or less full time. And when that period came to an end, she decided she's going to go for a job. And again, it's the same job that I do now, she did back then. And this is an in-store shopper position. So the thing was, she started doing that a few hours. I believe there was a maximum of 29 hours a week that you're allowed to work. It's a minimum commitment there as well, 15 hours a week. But you know, you're not allowed to work any more than 29 hours. And she did that, and she said, look, I think we need some cash. We need to pay off some of those medical bills. And also I just need to occupy my mind with something else, and I totally appreciate that. After the horrendous years that we've been through, it is important to just look at the world slightly differently, you know. And that is exactly what she did. And she had fun doing it. So it's basically walking around a supermarket with a shopping trolley and your iPhone app, and picking off one item after the other and putting it all into brown bags, checking it out, putting it on a shelf, and then a driver comes and delivers those items to you, well, the customer basically. And there's two types of positions. One is the one that I do, or the one that Julia did, which is the in-store shopper position, which you literally only spend time at a supermarket. And the other one is that you own a car and you pick up those bags. Occasionally you do shopping as well, and you go and drive to the customer and hand it to them. And so that's the job. That's the idea. And it's nice. It kind of pays $9 an hour, which doesn't sound like it's the world. But you know, on one hand, it's not that tough. I mean, it's kind of, you know, there are time limits involved, so they do time you per item. You got to make sure you find that on time, and you make sure you have to find X amount of items, you know, ongoingly. But that's not the tough part. If you know how a supermarket works, and if you know where the items are, and if you like shopping, which I always did, and I was always interested in kind of, you know, products, this is kind of an okay job. But in full American fashion, of course, you don't just get the salary. It's a little bit like a waiter in a restaurant who doesn't just get a base salary, if he gets it at all. You get that as well as tips. So the tips are something, America is very much a tipping culture, and there's this thing that's kind of shifting in the last few years. Has been shifting a bit, that voluntary tipping has become something more like an involuntary tipping type culture. You know, there's always the 15% of service tax that is sometimes called, or a tip, on the check when you pay it. And you're just kind of expected to give that no matter if the service was good or not. And then on top of that, you can go do voluntary contributions if you wish, or you can, you know, reduce that charge as well. So that is all that is possible. And as an in-store shopper, which is the role that I do, I get to share that tip with the driver. Not 50-50, it's more like a 70-30 type of arrangement. And I think shoppers are expected to pay a delivery fee as well as a tip on top of that. So, you know, it's so basically oops, whoa, I think I just ran over something. Hopefully that doesn't destroy my bike. Well, things look healthy back there, good stuff. So, you know, it's very different to what's happening in the UK in regards to grocery delivery, you know. So we've known grocery delivery in the UK for like, I don't know, 20 years, probably longer even, way longer than Sainsbury's and Tesco's have come up with the idea of doing grocery deliveries. I suppose it was sometime in the early 2000s, in the early noughties, where everyone all of a sudden just came up with the idea, we must deliver at no charge to the customer. And you go, great. I wonder what was in the background there, what people were thinking as to why don't we just charge for that, you know. And so it's very different here. So here it's Instacart as a third-party organization that's not run by the supermarkets, whereas Sainsbury's To You and Tesco Delivery, those are kind of governed by the actual supermarket, even though they may outsource this and then kind of white label the service. Sainsbury's are the people who deliver your groceries as well as shop them, so there's no third party involved there. But Waitrose in the UK don't do it that way. They have Ocado, and I found that incredibly confusing at first. That I was thinking, if I wanted my groceries delivered from Waitrose, why do I have to, what the hell is Ocado then? You know, why can't they just call it Waitrose Delivery? What's the problem with that? Well, I guess it's political, because the third party would have, I guess, approached them, or they would have outsourced this and say, can you please do this for us, because we're a freaking supermarket, we don't have a clue about delivery and grocery shopping, we just make sure things are on the shelves type of thing, you know. And that's exactly the situation here in the US, where because of the size of the country, not every supermarket chain is in every state as well. That's the other issue. So here in Florida, in South Florida, we have a big supermarket chain called Publix, and that's the supermarket where I'm working at. They have several stores here on the beach and on the mainland, but they're as far as Atlanta, I believe. So I think they're operating in 3 states. But that is it, you know. So in Texas, the situation is completely different. Yes, of course, you have supermarkets, but they're not Publix. They're called H-E-B, for example. That's one big supermarket chain in Texas. I don't know where else they operate. New York, California, those are the totally different supermarkets. Like Safeway, we know this in the UK. Safeway is a kind of a known brand in the UK, and they operate in San Francisco, for example. I'm sure they operate elsewhere as well, but we in Florida don't have Safeway, for example. Whereas in the UK, Sainsbury's is from, you know, the northern tip of Scotland to, I don't know, Southend, I guess. You know, they're everywhere, much like Tesco's as well. So they, I guess, can do that nationwide in the UK, but in the US it's very different, because every supermarket would have had to come up with their own version of doing it. And I guess, you know, they didn't want to, or it was too expensive or whatnot. From what I gather, our local supermarket, they've tried this out about 10 years ago, but it didn't work out for them. So it's one of those things. So that's kind of the difference between grocery delivery in the US versus the UK. So while in the UK we had it since the 50s and 60s with people like Iceland, where it's not exactly delivery. I mean, it is delivery, but they don't do the shopping for you. So with Iceland, I seem to remember that you still had to go in, do the shopping, pay for it, put it in a cart, and then at the checkout you tell a driver, hey, can I have that delivered please? And then he will show up, I don't know, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and bring you the bags that you've packed and shopped yourself. So of course that's not something that the millennials like, so they have to be able to sit back at Starbucks chatting to somebody while casually then hacking in what they want for delivery the next day on their iPhone. That's very important that you know, they don't have to go out and do shopping themselves anymore. But it's extremely convenient, not just so much for the millennial generation who just don't want to do it. It's also for people who can't do it. I mean, you know, people with small children and who have just really can't afford the 2-3 hour chunk out of their day once a week to get groceries delivered. So that's where Instacart comes in. And the way, from what I understand, the way they're paid, it's different per supermarket. So sometimes on a chain like Whole Foods, I guess they take a percentage of whatever the food costs at the supermarket, but that's only possible on high-priced ventures like Whole Foods, for example. But on kind of discount supermarkets, that's not really how it works. They do add a little bit of money, not a lot. It's literally like 50 cents depending on an item on top of the actual price of what you'd pay when you go into the supermarket yourself. So on top of that, there's a nominal delivery charge. It's not a lot, I think it's $5.99, which compared to what it costs to go to the supermarket and back maybe on a Lyft ride, that is often half price, if not much less than that. So people do the maths and they say, actually I spent $5.99 and more just on petrol just to go to the supermarket, let alone the amount of time it costs me to do that. So that's why this is interesting as a venture. Instacart is a startup company based in San Francisco, and they haven't been doing it for that long. I believe in under 5 years they went from an interesting idea to something, you know, that we have today. So it's this explosive growth there. Very exciting stuff, not just for me but for everyone who's getting groceries from them. So delivered as well as shopped. We keep hiring people, and I've been doing it for 2 months. I really like it. It's a nice little gig for me, and at the same time it's part-time, so it leaves me time for all my other creative ventures, be that anywhere around the web, my kind of 3D hobbies, and of course, you know, what I do on YouTube, which I may talk to you about in another video of what my plans are for that. But for now, it's also a good test for me to see how fit am I actually. Can I, after my cancer treatment, after recovery, can I, how fit am I to do a job? And I must say, it's touch wood, it's going really well. It's something I've been doing since, I believe, August. So that's August, September, now it's October. So I've been doing it for about 2 months, and in my last surgery was in December, late December 2017. That was my final surgery. Before that, I had that massive surgery that was in October. I believe that's about a year ago. And then 10 weeks later, we did that kind of smaller surgery, yet again another surgery. And technically, I'm still recovering from all that. Yet, I seem to be fit enough to do this job. And I mean, you know what grocery shopping is like. It's annoying sometimes, but it's one of those things. Think about it. What would happen if you do it for 6 to 8 hours a day? That's kind of what I'm doing, and it's fun. I must say, it is fun. Sometimes the system is extremely clever. The way they've designed it works with iOS, works with Android, and it's all completely mobile phone based. So the customer orders on an iPhone app, and we get an iPhone app that we use to tick off what items need to be shopped. We basically scan them. So I go around, I see whatever type of toilet paper they want, and then I scan it with my iPhone's camera, and then the system will tell me, is this the correct item or not? Is it a different size, different brand? Because, you know, when you're rushing around, you're not always grabbing the right thing. I mean, pasta sauce, there's like 150 million pasta sauces out there, and each manufacturer makes 12 sizes with 140 flavors, and you go, okay, that's, you know, sometimes a little bit tricky, but it's working, and it's kind of nice how the system guides you there, you know. And then you print labels to put them on the bags, and the bags go on the shelves, and you know, it's all very straightforward. So it's a very cool thing. But what I find most impressive, I must say, is not only that both Julia and I are now doing this. So Julia's actually, that's what I forgot to mention earlier, Julia's now moved on from that position. She was so good, she was actually promoted twice within the company. So first she was a shopper for maybe a year or so, 9 months to a year, something like that. She was a very good shopper, and then she was promoted to a position called shift lead, and that means she is in the supermarket looking after all the shoppers who do the shopping for Instacart. And that was going well for about 6 months or so, and then she was promoted again to something called site manager. That's right, yes, it was called something else I believe before, but it's now called the site manager. And what that role does is that allows her to now liaise with other shift leads, so it's kind of another step up the ladder. And I'd love to talk to you more about this, but of course my shift's about to start, and I have about 3 minutes left. Great, so that's just about enough time to wrap this up and speak to you later. Thank you so much for watching, and perhaps I will keep in touch with you this way about what else is happening in my super exciting life here in Miami Beach. Take care, bye bye.